Well, it's that time of year again. Time to reflect on all the games we've played and order them in a list, almost arbitrarily, for at least someone to disagree with. That sounds like fun, right? Okay, let's get started. Coming in at number 10 is Uncharted 4. I'll be the first to admit that one of the last things I wanted this year was another Uncharted game. Don't get me wrong, I've certainly enjoyed the games in the past, and Uncharted 2 is one of the most spectacular shooters of the last generation. I was excited for something new to come out of Naughty Dog, though, after thoroughly enjoying The Last of Us, and wasn't overly excited about dipping back into the same well of smarmily murdering a bunch of mercenaries through various tombs and ruins. To my surprise, I ended up having a terrific time with Uncharted 4. Naughty Dog clearly learned a lot about character building thanks to The Last of Us, as relationships in the game feel much more human than they have in the past. Drake's no longer just a walking, quipping auto turret, he's got feelings, and so do the people around him. The game bounces back and forth between Drake's childhood outings with his brother and their current escapades, which allows for some engaging storytelling. Beyond this, Uncharted 4 is, unlike its predecessors, unafraid to have you go long stretches without encountering an enemy. These sections are filled with platforming, swinging, puzzle solving, or just taking in the often breathtaking environments. When you are in combat, the game feels markedly better than previous outings. A grappling hook is now incorporated to quickly swing between platforms and execute some stylish-looking takedowns. And there are some light stealth elements that you can choose to engage with or not. These mechanics carry over into the multiplayer, which, while not what I'm in it for, is better than it has any right to be. While Uncharted 4 can start to feel a little needlessly lengthy near its end, it's a beautiful-looking thrill ride and deserves the attention of any action fan. Number 9, Hitman. I have never been good at the Hitman games. It would always go the same way. I'd think of a plan, try real hard to calculate each of my moves with such precision that I could execute my brilliant tactics, get spotted by someone, and have to restart the mission. Now, keep in mind that that still happens pretty frequently in 2016's episodic Hitman, but IO Interactive have made great strides to make it as easy as possible for a bumbling dummy like myself to play out intricate murder plans. They've given the option of opportunity tracking, meaning that the game will guide you by the hand, leading you to disguises and items that you can use to poison a party host's drink or impress a singer with your drumming before pushing him off a roof. It's a great way to get people to see every bit of wackiness your game has to offer, and it's always satisfying when every moving part works just so and your target is eliminated. For those who prefer to figure out the stuff on their own, it's a completely optional feature, meaning that if you're better than me at figuring out these games and you want to follow an intricate web of assassination, you can go right ahead. I can't stress enough how fun this game is, which was surprising given its lackluster marketing lead up to release. I can remember being discouraged by the fact that it was announced that the game would be episodic not months before it was out, but that turned out to work in the game's favor. Being there was roughly a month between chapters, it allowed for more time experimenting with each map, learning each level intricately, and seeing all the game had to offer. Hitman really makes you feel like a badass assassin, and I can't wait to see what's going to come out of the studio for Season 2. Number 8! The House Abandoned. The House Abandoned is a really cool game. This text adventure dripping with an 80s aesthetic will surprise you in just how creepy it can be. For a game that renders you immobile for the entirety of the experience, it does a lot to make you feel uncomfortable. It's not a long game, but it does manage to leave an impression, changing the environment around you along with the events of the narrative. We played through all of The House Abandoned during Spooktober this year, and you can check out the video on the channel. It is available for free on PC, though, and any fan of horror, the 80s, or Stranger Things should really give it a try. And number 7, Mafia 3. I totally get some people's aversion to this game. It's by no means one of the greatest open world games ever made. But what it lacks in original and varied mission design, it more than makes up for in cinematography and style. Seriously, Mafia 3 is absolutely dripping with style. From the curated soundtrack that makes remarkable use of rock and roll hits from the 50s and 60s, to the documentary talking head style cinematics that play in between key moments in the game, Mafia 3 absolutely nails the aesthetic that it's going for. Beyond this, the game manages to tell a stellar, pulpy tale of revenge that kept me motivated to see it through to the end. As far as gameplay is concerned, it's pretty standard open world fare. Drive to the objective, shoot a bunch of guys, escape from the cops, repeat. There's some pretty forgiving stealth elements that are fun to mess around with while infiltrating enemy outposts, and the upgrades you'll receive for completing favors for the various underbosses working for you as you take over New Bordeaux are a nice carrot on a stick. If you're not careful, you'll lose out on these upgrades as some of your underbosses may become upset with you if you aren't assigning them enough of the city. It's a nice give and take that led to some tense, if not a little silly, shadowy parlays between mob bosses. There's definitely some open world jank in Mafia 3, but it was honestly just entertaining, and never broke the game in my experience. Mafia 3 is a prime example of interesting and effective storytelling, and the setting and characters make this an experience that's totally worth your time. Number 6! Titanfall 2. If there's one thing that can make almost any situation better, it's giant robots. Seriously, the first Titanfall took the formula etched out by Call of Duty and turned it up by making the experience significantly more fast-paced and throwing some giant, weighty, mechanized suits into the fray. This year's sequel to Titanfall turns it up even further by adding a full campaign, which is awesome by the way, and refining the multiplayer even further, making this one of the best shooters I've played all year, and certainly the best multiplayer shooter. First off, the campaign is fantastic. While it might not have much in the way of a traditional flow, this kind of ends up working in the game's favor. Each mission ends up feeling like its own encapsulated experience, each with their own interesting hook. My favorite mission in particular has you hastily running on walls and jumping between platforms while you manipulate time, making an area safe to navigate. It's hectic, fast, and incredibly satisfying. On top of this, the relationship between the player character and his Titan BT-7274 is genuinely endearing and keeps the story moving in a Big Hero 6 kind of way. The multiplayer in this game is another story entirely. Clearly, this is the game's bread and butter. I mean, the series has its roots in sensational, fast-paced multiplayer action. This entry is no exception and is wildly successful at bringing some of the best multiplayer experiences I've had with a shooter in years. At its core, the game is very similar to Titanfall 1, but refinements have been made to make this game even better. Additions of new perks like a grappling hook allow for more customization of loadouts to really personalize the experience. There's now more of an emphasis on accumulating score to unlock the ability to call down your Titan too. New game modes like Bounty Hunt offer some variety to the experience, and all of this adds up to what has to be my favorite multiplayer experience of the year. And the core mechanics of running on walls, boost jumping, and stomping around in a monstrous Titan still feel incredible. Titanfall 2 is a really worthy successor to Titanfall 1, and even manages to surpass it. This is a game that anyone interested in first-person shooters should definitely check out. Number 5. Firewatch. There's something romantic about the idea of dropping everything and retiring to the forest for an extended amount of time. That's really what Campo Santo's Firewatch is all about, and it tells its story remarkably well. Not to use the term in a pejorative sense, but this walking simulator takes you on a journey of self-discovery delivered expertly, and helped by the incredible casting of Rich Sommer of Mad Men and Cissy Jones from last year's Life is Strange as Delilah. The story takes some unexpected twists that will take you down the well of paranoia, and you'll love every second of it. The world of the game is beautiful, thanks to the amazing minimalistic art style and fantastic use of colors. You won't just be walking around, though. You're given a disposable camera that you can use to snap pictures of things you find particularly noteworthy, and there are some light traversal elements that harken to games like Metroid. Not to say that this is an ability-dependent platformer, but there are some areas you won't be able to reach until you've acquired a certain item. The game is also full of dialogue choices. Henry can comment on certain events or objects in the open world via his radio and communication with Delilah. These are, for the most part, the only two characters in the game, making it doubly impressive how well the story is delivered. It's rare that a game attempts to tell an impactful story like this, let alone one with so few characters, but Firewatch's story is undoubtedly an emotional journey that'll grip most of those who play it. Number 4. Asemblance. This game's a weird one. It kinda came out of nowhere, and just as soon as it garnered some recognition, it seemed like everyone was done with it. Asemblance did something for me this year that few games were able to do. It excited me to the point that I needed to show it to everybody. Its inspirations are clear, the structure is similar to something like PT, as it has you exploring the same environments multiple times with minor things changing as you advance. But Asemblance managed to replicate an element of PT that few other borrowers of the formula have. The communal confusion. The game's esoteric color scheme change-ups indicating that something in the world is altered as you unraveled some obtuse mystery was immensely enticing, and had me and my friends in constant discussion about what the end of the game could possibly be. The much-rumored White Room was at the forefront of much discussion in my household for weeks until another streamer managed to find his way into the true ending of the game. I'll be frank, this isn't the best-looking game on the list, nor is the most mechanically interesting. But the sense of confusion and the insatiable need to unravel the mystery of Asemblance is one of the most visceral reactions I've had to a game this year. and I can't wait to see what's next out of Nilo Studios. Number 3. Super Hot. I can't believe that someone didn't make Super Hot before this year. Seriously, with this industry's obsession with bullet time, it's crazy to think that it took someone this long to come up with a mechanic as cool and stylish as Super Hots. It's so simple. Time moves only when you do, and that leads to some of the most fun I've had with a puzzle game ever. This game does basically everything right. From start to finish, it's one of the most stylish games I've ever laid eyes on. When not in the meat of the game, shooting up red dudes who burst into a bunch of polygons, you're talking to another super hot NPC player, swapping info and hot takes on the game by jamming on the keyboard or listening canned responses from your character. When you do dive into the game, you'll realize that you're playing one of the most well-thought-out puzzle games ever created. Basically, you're being attacked by a bunch of red dudes and you'll have to kill them before they can kill you. That means that you can pick up a statue, throw it at a guy, forcing him to drop his gun, which you can catch, turn on him, jump over his buddy to shoot a third guy, before throwing the gun at a fourth guy, leaving him open for a hand-to-hand combo, taking him down. If this sounds insanely cool, it is. Plus, once you complete a level, you get to watch the whole thing recreated at regular speed. It's some of the most satisfying action I've ever put my hands on, and I've found myself going back to it multiple times throughout the year. It's not just a terrific mechanic, though. The story's pretty cool, too. By the end of it, it starts to take on an anxious view of technology reminiscent of films like Cronenberg's Existence. Once the game's completed, a challenge and endless mode are unlocked, but one of the main draws of the game are figuring out a solution to the carefully laid out levels. That said, though, you can always load up the game to play a few hours of Tree Dude. Number 2. Inside. I'm really glad that I played Inside when I did. I missed out on Playdead's last game, Limbo, until years after its release, and some of the impact of the game was lost on me. Not the case here. This relatively short platforming experience is filled with urgency and despair. The feeling that you get when running away from armed guards and attack dogs just to narrowly escape at the last minute is incredibly tense. If you played Limbo, the game will feel very similar, as the majority of the game is dedicated to platforming and box puzzles. The one big mechanical change-up is the ability to control lifeless humanoid drones through the use of some real sci-fi looking brain helmets. This leads to some more complex puzzles in the game, the type that'll have you scratching your head for a while, but make you feel like an idiot once you've bested them for not figuring them out sooner. Mechanics aside, though, one of my favorite things about the game is its tone. Inside is prominently bleak, and its color palette goes a long way to drive this home. The visuals are minimalistic, but the character animations are brilliant and do a lot for the world in the game. While there's no dialogue or written story in the game, you can feel the urgency in the situation as the child you're playing as fumbles and flails away from his pursuers. All of this adds up to one of my favorite gameplay experiences of the year, but I haven't even spoken about the last act of the game. When I say that I'm glad I got to experience this game when it came out, it's because of its last 20 minutes. This game takes such an unexpected turn that it rendered me speechless. In case you've managed to remain in the dark regarding the end of the game to this point, I won't explicitly lay out what happens, but just know that it's wild, and deserves the attention it got upon release. It's the difference between the game being cool and being one of the best games of the year. You should really play this game if you haven't already, but we do have a playthrough on the channel you can watch right here as well. Number 1, and my favorite game of 2016, Doom! Oh man! I have a hard time containing my enthusiasm for this game. It's just incredible. Leading up to its release, I was so down on this game. Footage made it look like a generic first-person shooter, and the multiplayer beta was less than impactful. It didn't take very long after it came out to realize I was playing one of the best shooters I've played in years, though. The balance in this game is unparalleled, shooting your way through countless hordes of demons, ripping through them with your bare hands to replenish your health, and chainsawing them to replenish your ammo. Even choices like not including a reload animation goes a long way to help the frantic nature of this game. It's like a beautiful, visceral, mesmerizing, gory ballet. Every combat encounter in this game feels choreographed, and it never stopped being exhilarating. Not once. Not to mention the game is funny. It has an almost irreverent sense of humor that pokes fun at the self-seriousness of other games in the genre. Doom Guy will routinely do just the opposite of whatever the guy on the radio is telling him to do, and it's hilarious. The tone it's struck here is absolutely perfect and is exactly what Doom should be in 2016. Outside of the amazing campaign, there's also a fully featured multiplayer, which is fine, but definitely not the draw for me in the game. More interesting is SnapMap. This level editor allows for people to create their own levels and game modes, and fills the game with post-campaign content. Again, it doesn't really hold a candle to the game's single player, but it's novel that it's there, and the dev team has even gone back to add some content that harkens back to the original Doom. There's so much to say about what makes this game as awesome as it is. The weapons, the secrets, the collectibles. But the easiest thing to say is that you should just play it. There's no reason not to. If you like action games at all and haven't played Doom, you're doing yourself a disservice. There are few games in the last handful of years, let alone this one, that feel as satisfying, cool, or action-packed as Doom. Doom is one of those games that I've gone back to a bunch of times this year because it feels so good, and I just couldn't wait to go back to hell. Guys, that's going to do it for this year's Game of the Year list. Keep in mind, this is just my list of games. As much as I'd like to, I can't play everything. So these are just the ones that truly stood out to me. But let me know what your favorite games of the year are down below. I'd love to hear it. And if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button, since that'll help us make more stuff for the channel. Thanks for watching, everybody, and have a great new year.